Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready to dive into some Stoic wisdom today. We're cracking open the Daily Stoic, and I'm really curious to see what we find.
Always a good time to revisit the Stoics, right?
Absolutely. They always seem to have something insightful to say.
Yeah, and it's fascinating how a philosophy from ancient Rome can still feel so relevant in our modern world. I was thinking about that the other day. It's pretty remarkable when you consider that figures like George Washington, Frederick the Great, even Adam Smith, they all found value in Stoicism.
Wow, that's quite a diverse group. What do you think it was about Stoicism that resonated with such influential figures across different eras?
I think there's something timeless about its wisdom, wouldn't you say? At its core, Stoicism is really about self-mastery.
Self-mastery, okay.
Yeah, it's about how to effectively navigate a world that often feels like, well, it's outside of our control.
Yeah, I can see that.
And, it all starts with recognizing what we can control. And this is where the Stoics introduce those three core disciplines: perception, action, and will.
Okay, perception, action, will. Those sound pretty foundational, like pillars holding up this idea of a Stoic life.
Exactly. They're interwoven. And I think the Daily Stoic does a great job of highlighting their importance, especially when it comes to perception. There's that quote that really struck me. Do you remember that one about certainty of judgment in the present moment?
Oh, yeah, that one really stood out. Certainty of judgment in the present moment. What are your thoughts on that?
It's powerful because it speaks to the heart of Stoic thought.
Yeah.
So much of our stress and anxiety comes from dwelling on the past or worrying about the future.
Oh, absolutely. The what ifs can really get you stuck.
Right. But Stoicism, it urges us to be present, to ground ourselves in this moment and make clear, reasoned judgments about what we're experiencing right now.
Easier said than done sometimes, though, right?
Definitely a practice, not a perfection. It takes time and effort to cultivate that awareness. Speaking of, you know what else really resonated with me? That quote about addiction, how it means you've lost the freedom to abstain.
Oh, wow, yeah. Lost the freedom to abstain.
Yeah.
It's a powerful way of putting it. Makes you think about all the little things we might be giving our power away to without even realizing it.
Absolutely. It made me think about that too. And that's exactly the point the Stoics were making. Those seemingly small compulsions, whether it's endlessly scrolling on our phones, getting caught up in gossip, or anything that pulls us away from our center.
It's like we become a little less free each time.
Right.
Exactly. Like we're chipping away at our freedom and our judgment gets clouded in the process. It's almost like we become enslaved, losing that freedom to abstain, which is so crucial for clear thinking and action.
Wow. It's amazing how much those little compulsions can add up, isn't it?
Yeah.
It really makes you think about how much clearer our perception could be if we reclaim that freedom.
It's a powerful thought, isn't it? And it's not just about willpower. It's about really understanding how our perceptions fuel the cycle.
It's about awareness, right?
Exactly. And that awareness of our perceptions, it naturally leads us to the next pillar: action. We'll delve into that in a bit, but first.
So we've talked about perception, how we see things, but then there's action, actually doing something with that awareness. And what I appreciate about the Daily Stoic is how it really emphasizes putting these principles into practice, not just, thinking about them.
Right. It's about embodying the philosophy, not just pondering it.
Exactly, exactly. And one thing that stood out to me was this emphasis on aligning our actions with our principles, even in those small everyday moments.
It's about living our philosophy, not just, reading about it.
Yeah, I love that. It's about those little daily choices, right? Because it's not always about these grand gestures.
Right. It's the small, consistent choices we make each and every day. And the book really does emphasize that a lot.
It does. And it reminds us to consider what nature demands of you, encouraging us to take action, however small, toward a more meaningful life. I thought that was interesting how they framed it as what nature demands. It's like this innate calling to contribute to something larger than ourselves.
It is. It's that sense of duty and service.
Exactly. Yeah, that sense of duty. Would you say that's a big part of Stoic action, that sense of duty and service?
Absolutely. And it highlights that interconnectedness of all things, right? Our actions, even the seemingly insignificant ones, they ripple outward. They impact the world around us.
It's true. Even just like a smile or a kind word, it can have a ripple effect. And that makes a lot of sense when we think about it in terms of those Stoic principles, how everything is connected.
Exactly. And how our actions, no matter how small, contribute to the world around us. It's a really powerful way of looking at things.
It is. It really is. So we've got perception, we've got action, and then there's that third pillar, will. And that one, I feel like that's where things get really real. It's about acceptance, resilience, that inner strength to face whatever life throws our way. And let's be honest, life has a way of testing our resilience.
It does. Life rarely goes according to plan, does it? And the Stoics, they knew this firsthand. Even Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, he wrote about dealing with daily annoyances, difficult people. It's so relatable, even today, right? And he reminds us that getting worked up over these things is like getting caught up in the smoke and dust of myth, just fleeting moments in the grand scheme of things.
I love that analogy, the smoke and dust of myth, because it really puts things into perspective, doesn't it? But how do we actually apply that in our own lives, in those moments when frustrations threaten to get under our skin? Because it's one thing to read about it, but another thing to actually live it.
Yeah, you're right. It's a practice. It's not always easy. And the book actually provides a really great example of this with Seneca. Seneca was one of the wealthiest men in Rome at the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he had it all. But you know what? Despite his fortune, he still encountered a myriad of problems, proving that external circumstances, they don't necessarily equate to inner peace.
That's a good reminder for all of us. I
Yeah.
think we can all relate to that, right?
Yeah.
How often do we fall into that trap of thinking, if I could just have this one thing, then all my problems would disappear?
Oh, absolutely. It's so easy to get caught up in that, isn't it? Thinking that if we could just reach that next milestone, that promotion, that bigger house, that perfect relationship, then, then happiness would finally arrive. It's an illusion.
It is. It's like we're always chasing after something, but then even when we get it, it doesn't always bring the lasting happiness we thought it would.
And that's where Stoicism steps in, right? It's
Yeah.
not about seeking happiness in external things because they're fleeting. It's about finding that inner peace and purpose amidst life's ups and downs, regardless of our circumstances.
It's about shifting our focus from what we can't control to what we can.
Exactly. And the Daily Stoic gives us a really powerful example of this with President James Garfield. When he was facing his political enemies, he famously declared, "If it is brought to my door, the bringer will find me at home." How's that for a statement?
That's amazing. He sounds like he had incredible inner strength and resolve.
He did, and he chose to meet those challenges head on with courage and a calm sense of self. It speaks to that Stoic belief that we always have a choice in how we respond. Even when we're faced with difficult situations, we have a choice in how we meet them.
That really ties back to that third pillar of Stoicism, that idea of will, doesn't it? It's about cultivating that inner resilience to weather those storms.
Absolutely. And it's not about becoming emotionless or indifferent. It's about acknowledging our emotions, recognizing those judgments behind them, and then choosing how we want to respond.
And we've talked about this idea of hypolepsis before, how the Stoics believed our emotions aren't random, but stem from our judgments about events. So it's not about suppressing feelings, it's more about examining those judgments.
Exactly. And that's how we start to understand ourselves better and ultimately gain more control over our emotional responses. It's a process, not a quick fix. And it's something we can practice every day in small ways.
So going back to the practical aspect, it's not about waiting for the perfect time or some grand gesture. It's about taking those small steps, making those conscious choices day in and day out.
You got it. The Daily Stoic really emphasizes that. It's about focusing on what nature demands of you, taking action even in the face of adversity, even if it means taking small steps forward, especially when facing those seemingly impossible obstacles.
It's really inspiring when you think about figures like Nelson Mandela, how they embodied those Stoic principles, even in the face of such adversity. It really highlights how Stoicism isn't some, passive philosophy. It's about facing those challenges head on with resilience and making conscious choices, even when those choices might feel limited. It's pretty powerful stuff.
Absolutely. And it makes you think about the people we admire, the ones who really inspire us, It's often those who demonstrate resilience, that ability to handle pressure with grace and, an unwavering commitment to their values.
They just have this strength of character that shines through.
Exactly. And often they embody a lot of those Stoic principles, even if they wouldn't necessarily use the label Stoic themselves.
It's like they intuitively understand the importance of focusing on what they can control, accepting what they can't, and always striving to, act in alignment with their values. And thinking about it that way, it makes Stoicism feel much more accessible, almost like a blueprint for living a life of meaning.
It is. It's a way of life. It's not about seeking out hardship or becoming some emotionless robot. It's about developing that inner strength, that wisdom to navigate whatever life throws our way. Because let's face it, life rarely goes according to plan.
That's for sure. But even amidst those inevitable challenges, it's about finding that sense of peace and purpose.
Exactly. And you know what else really resonated with me from the Daily Stoic? That image of choosing to walk willingly with the cart of fate rather than being dragged along.
Oh, yeah, that's a powerful one. It really captures that essence of Stoic acceptance, doesn't it? And it's not about resignation, it's about making a conscious choice to engage with life on life's terms.
It is, and it speaks to the transformative power of Stoicism. We don't become immune to challenges, but we equip ourselves to face them with resilience, wisdom, and grace.
And that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Daily Stoic, what would you say is the one thing you hope our listeners take away from this exploration?
If there's one key takeaway from all of this, it's that Stoicism is a practice. It's a journey, a lifelong journey, really, of aligning our thoughts, actions, and our will with what is truly good and meaningful. It's about showing up every single day and making those conscious choices that reflect our values.
It's about those small, everyday actions, isn't it? Practicing gratitude, examining those judgments, choosing kindness. Because ultimately, it's those little things that really shape our character and how we experience the world around us.
Beautifully said. Couldn't agree more.
And on that note, we'll leave you with this thought. What one Stoic practice speaks to you the most? And how can you incorporate it into your daily life? How would it change your interactions, even in a small way? Until next time, keep exploring and keep those Stoic principles close at heart.